Well, hello, Nativity Bible heads. It is Dr. Wayne, and it is time for Sunday morning Power Bible Study. We're now into the seventh Sunday after the Epiphany, and this is for February 20. I am technically out of the country. I'm recording this, obviously, before I leave because I'm going to Israel. That's the plan. We depart on the 14th, and so I won't be there on that Sunday, the 20th, but you're still going to get Power Bible Study, doggone it. The Epiphany season continues with passages from Genesis 45, Psalm 37, 1 Corinthians, we're still in chapter 15, and also Luke chapter 6, where Jesus continues his Sermon on the Plain. We're going to start with our Genesis passage, and we've been having lately stuff from the prophets. This reading comes from Genesis chapter 45. And if you're familiar with the overall flow of the book of Genesis, most of the time we relate to it as, the creation story and stories of Abraham, Isaac, Jacob. Well, I'm sorry, I got something in my mouth there and I'm trying to figure out what's going on with it. The last, third of the book is the story of Joseph, okay? And remember, we're all familiar with the story of Joseph. Joseph is that son of Jacob that his brothers sell him, and because he's this, they just kind of don't like him very much. He's a dreamer. He has a lot of dreams, and he gets sold into slavery, and he gets taken to Egypt. It's like a human trafficking kind of a thing. I don't know if you'd call it slavery, but he got sold, and in Egypt he ends up rising to a position of power. And when things end up going badly in the world of famine and all of that, which happened from time to time in those days, guess what happens? The brothers of Jacob, the brothers of Joseph, Jacob's sons, end up going to Egypt, and they're making a supplication to a person that they didn't know was their brother Joseph, whom they had sold into slavery, but Joseph knew who they were. Yeah. And the chapter 45 is the climax of them reuniting, of them a face-to-face meeting. Let's just dig into it, shall we? Genesis chapter 45. Then Joseph could no longer control himself before all those who stood by him, and he cried out, "Send everyone away from me." So no one stayed with him when Joseph made himself known to his brothers. And he wept so loudly that the Egyptians heard it, and the household of Pharaoh heard it. Joseph said to his brothers, "I am Joseph. Is my father still alive?" But his brothers could not answer him, so dismayed were they at his presence. So the scene had been, didn't read the whole thing, but Joseph's brothers were there supplicating him, and he knew who they were. They didn't know who he was until, and it says he couldn't control himself any longer, and he sent everybody away, and then he cries out and says, "I am Joseph." And can you imagine where it says they couldn't answer? So dismayed were they at his presence. Of course they're dismayed. They thought he was dead, and they felt responsible for it because they were the ones who had sold him, right? So this is the climax of that story. Then Joseph said to his brothers, verse 4, "Come closer to me." And they came closer. He said, "I am your brother Joseph, whom you sold into Egypt. And now do not be distressed or angry with yourselves because you sold me here, for God sent me before you to preserve life." So, we're in the season of Epiphany, right? The season of Epiphany is about the manifestation of God in the world, the manifestation of the divine, the showing of the divine, the realization of the divine. Here, this fits a theme of Epiphany in the sense that there's this epiphany coming to Joseph's brothers, right? But there's also an epiphany in that God has been at work in the activities of Joseph's brothers who intended ill, but God was at work anyway, okay? And in this moment is when it's realized, oh, God's hand was in that all along. Because this is in the narrative that we get from chapter 37 on with regard to Joseph, the narrative that we get is not a whole lot of, oh, and then God did this and God did that and God spoke to this person and God made this happen or God made this possible. And no, we don't have any of that. It's just a big, long narrative of what happened. And in this chapter is when we get the epiphany, or the epiphany comes to all of the readers of the story that, oh, God was in this all along. You had intended it for evil, but God worked it for good, okay? So that's what he's saying. Do not be distressed or angry with yourselves because you sold me here, for God sent me before you to preserve life. And he was helping preserve their lives because he was going to make sure that they got food, okay, in this time of famine. Verse 6, "For the famine has been in the land these 2 years, and there are 5 more years in which there will be neither plowing nor harvest. God sent me before you to preserve for you a remnant on earth, and to keep alive for you many survivors." See, so the epiphany is for the reader to see that God was working a much bigger plan than we could imagine in the pettiness of our things that we do as human beings, where we're doing them out of being selfish. The epiphany is, oh, wow, God can even use that. Wow. We don't always realize that God is at work in some of those little things, right? But in our theme of Epiphany, this story teaches us that even if we're not conscious of God, God is being conscious of us, okay? Verse 8, "So it was not you who sent me here." Remember, Joseph is still talking to his brothers. "But God, he has made me a father to Pharaoh and Lord of all his house and ruler over all the land of Egypt." Okay, he was kind of like the Secretary of Agriculture, that kind of a thing. Not really a prime minister, but maybe one of those, like a Ministry of Agriculture, Ministry of, the Treasury, something like that. "Hurry and go up to my father and say to him, 'Thus says your son Joseph, God has made me Lord of all Egypt. Come down to me, do not delay. You shall settle in the land of Goshen, and you shall be near me, you and your children and your children's children, as well as your flocks, your herds, and all that you have. I will provide for you there, since there are 5 more years of famine to come, so that you and your household and all that you have will not come to poverty. And now your eyes and the eyes of my brother Benjamin see that it is my own mouth that speaks to you." There was a special bond between Benjamin and Joseph. Benjamin was the youngest son. Joseph was next to the youngest. You must tell my father how greatly I am honored in Egypt and all that you have seen. Hurry and bring my father down here. Okay. Then he fell upon his brother Benjamin's neck and wept, while Benjamin wept upon his neck. A fun, tender, touching moment, yes? And he kissed all his brothers and wept upon them. And after that, his brothers talked with him. That's all we're going to cover in that. But you can see in that reunion the realization, the epiphany that, wow, God really has been at work, even not only in our ignorance, but when we were taking actions that were directly the opposite of what could be considered, well, is this a good idea? Is this something that, selling Joseph into slavery? It turns out God works it for good. Imagine that. Think about this. God using violence and turning it around for something that results in forgiveness. Yeah, you get my drift here? Yeah, exactly. That's what the cross is all about. So in this story of Joseph and his brothers, we get a preview, if you will, of that kind of reality. Okay, very good. We're going to move on. So that's Genesis 45. Our psalm passage is Psalm 37, and Psalm 37 is what did I do with it? Oh, there it is. I lost my card. I put these little cards in my pages. Oh, yeah, a little picture of nativity right there. See that? Yeah. See that? Picture of nativity with the rainbow coming out the top. So, yeah, I use those cards as my bookmarks. So, Psalm 37, we're not going to read the whole thing. We're just doing a portion of it. I think it's just like up to verse 12, verses 1 through 12. Do not fret because of the wicked. Do not be envious of wrongdoers. Okay, remember, a lot of times what the psalm is chosen for is the way its themes dovetail with the first reading, okay? So do you get this? Don't fret because of the wicked. Do not be envious of the wrongdoers. The idea, the Joseph's brothers, selling him into slavery and all of that, right? For they will soon fade like the grass and wither like the green herb. Trust in the Lord and do good, so you will live in the land and enjoy security. Take delight in the Lord. Okay, this thing about trusting in the Lord, doing good, living in the land, enjoying security, this is what we are called to do regardless of our judgments / perceptions / whatever we got going on with evildoers who appear to be winning, who appear to be gaining the upper hand. Take delight in the Lord, verse 4, and he will give you the desires of your heart. Commit your way to the Lord. Trust in him, and he will act. What's interesting about the Joseph story is we didn't get a whole lot of piety from Joseph, by the way. Joseph's communications with God came through dreams. There were a lot of dreams going on in Genesis with Joseph and his what brought him to power in Egypt was his ability to dream. That's also what got him in trouble with his brothers, their jealousy over that. Joseph the dreamer, okay, that kind of thing. So the way God spoke, it wasn't plain, it wasn't, the narrator never had to say that. The dreams were evidence that God was present and with Joseph in what he was doing. Commit your way to the Lord. Trust in him, and he will act. Verse 6 now. He will make your vindication shine like the light, and the justice of your cause like the noonday. You see that? Joseph's situation. Just play it out, play it out, play it out. Do what you know there is to be done. And guess what? The justice of your cause will, like the noonday, your vindication will shine like, it's like you don't have to work at it. It's actually going to happen on its own, okay? If we just carry through. Be still before the Lord and wait patiently for him. Do not fret over those who prosper in their way, over those who carry out evil devices. Refrain from anger and forsake wrath. Do not fret. It leads only to evil. For the wicked shall be cut off, but those who wait for the Lord shall inherit the land. We don't see a whole lot of inheriting the land. This is a precursor, if you will. You know how one of the Beatitudes of Jesus is, blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. Yeah, well, here, inherit the land. Those who wait for the Lord. This is actually, blessed are the meek, for they shall, that is basically a restatement of this same psalm, okay? Verse 10, yet a little while, and the wicked will be no more. Though you look diligently for their place, they will not be there. But the meek shall inherit the land. There you go. The meek shall inherit the land. That's blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. That's what the Beatitude is in Matthew. But the meek shall inherit the land and delight themselves in abundant prosperity. That's it. Oh, no, verse 12. The wicked plot against the righteous and gnash their teeth at... No, I don't think it... I think it's just do verse 11. So you see how this psalm, it dovetails with the experience of Joseph and the providence of God. Yes? Okay, we're moving on. Moving on to our 1 Corinthians chapter 15 passage, and then we'll go back to Luke chapter 6. In it, Paul has been talking about the resurrection, okay? Last week, he was saying, how can you possibly say there's no resurrection? If you say there's no resurrection, then Christ hasn't been resurrected, so there's got to be a resurrection. Here he is going into more logic of it. Verses 35 to 38, and then we're going to pick up again in verse 42 to 50. 1 Corinthians 15, 35. But someone will ask, how are the dead raised? With what kind of body do they come? Fool, what you sow does not come to life unless it dies. And as for what you sow, you do not sow the body that is to be, but a bare seed, perhaps of wheat or of some other grain. But God gives it a body as he has chosen, and to each kind of seed its own body. So Paul's illustration here in trying to explain what he means by a resurrected body, he's not saying that our skin and all of our organs and our blood and everything is we're back to what we were before. No, he is saying it is absolutely not that, because that which is perishable, that body that we live in right now, that's getting planted. And when it's planted, it's covered in dirt. Guess what? It becomes a seed. And what does a seed do? A seed is basically something that dies because of being buried. And then all of a sudden, it's got that little bit of life in it, though. There's still a little bit of life in that. And that's what he is, that's how he's describing the resurrected body. We don't know exactly what it looks like, but we know it doesn't look anything like what got put in the ground. That's his thing about the seed, about you don't, as for what you sow, you do not sow the body that is to be, but a bare seed. God gives it a body as he has chosen, to each to its kind of seed, its own body. So we have no clue what that means. We just call it a spiritual body. a resurrected body. The body that Christ had wasn't a flesh and bone body. It looked like it to the disciples from what we're told from the witness reports, but there's no continuity. I mean, it's still recognizable to the human eye, but it's not the same thing, bottom line. Look at this, verse 42. So it is with the resurrection of the dead. What is sown is perishable. What is raised is imperishable. So that's what's different about it. This body is perishable. When we're resurrected, we get an imperishable body. That's the kind of body that Jesus took in the resurrection. So in Paul's economy, it looks to us like a real body, but it can't be because it can't die. So it's something that for our experience in witnessing a resurrected body, we don't really know the difference, okay? But it is different, is what Paul is saying. It is sown in dishonor, verse 43. It is sown in dishonor, it is raised in glory. It is sown in weakness, it is raised in power. His point here is about the body, okay? The body that dies is not the body that raises, okay? There's no resuscitation of corpses going on here. It is sown a physical body. It is raised, this is in verse 44, a spiritual body. If there is a physical body, there is also a spiritual body. So this is a part of his, like, one side of the coin, two sides of the same coin. Thus it is written, the first man, Adam, became a living being. We are not 100% sure what it is that he is quoting here, but it looks like somehow a conflation of the story of Genesis in Genesis 2, when God formed Adam, man, from the dust of the ground, and then he breathed life into him. The first man, Adam, became a living being. The last Adam became a life-giving spirit. When he talks about the last Adam, he's talking about Jesus Christ. Verse 46, but it is not the spiritual that is first, but the physical, and then the spiritual. The first man was from the earth, a man of dust. The second man is from heaven. The second man referring to Jesus Christ, of course, right? Verse 48, as was the man of dust, so are those who are of the dust. And as is the man of heaven, so are those who are of heaven. Okay. Again, he's delineating two different realities. What we see as far as our experience of the resurrected body and what it actually is are two different things. Just as we have borne the image of the man of dust, we will also bear the image of the man of heaven. You see, for Paul, Jesus is that paradigm of our future. His resurrection is the first fruits or the precursor of our resurrection, okay? This is what he's guaranteed. Verse 5, last verse. What I am saying, brothers and sisters, is this. Flesh and blood cannot inherit the kingdom of God. And this is what he's talking about. He's talking about this like, we're not going to heaven as this corporeal being that we know ourselves as being. Nor does the perishable inherit the imperishable. Okay, Paul is leaning towards his. He's leaning towards a description of the experience of being with Christ. The Epiphany theme here is that I hope you can see that he's pushing toward that. That just like we are going to have that same kind of body that our Lord does right now. That's what he's basically saying. The Epiphany is that, for us, we are going in that same direction. He was a proleptic vision of where we're headed. He is our future, okay? That's our future. What we see with Jesus, that's the same thing with us. That's what I believe Paul is saying. The epiphany here is the realization that that divine path, that's what we are on as well, okay? We are brothers with Christ in that, sojourners on that path. All right, let's now go to Luke chapter 6, okay? Luke chapter 6. In Luke chapter 6, we were dealing with this last week. Now, this is the Sermon on the Plain. We call it the Sermon on the Plain because it's not the Sermon on the Mount. It sounds a lot like the Sermon on the Mount, but it's not exactly the same. Is it possible that Jesus gave two different sermons, one on the mount and one on the plain? I don't know. Maybe, probably not. It's probably all from the same source, and they've been tweaked, and Matthew tweaks his a little bit, Luke tweaks his a little bit. You don't get that teaching, you don't get the same thing from John, you don't get the same thing from Mark, but we do get the Sermon on the Plain here in Luke. So he has just got done giving them those four Beatitudes, the four blessed art you if, and the woe to you, those things. And then he continues in verse 27. But I say to you that, listen, love your enemies, do good to those who hate you. Okay, his emphasis in the blessings and the woes was on honoring who we are, being like God with other people, like God is with us. You get that? The way God is with us, that's the way we're supposed to be with other people. This is what his point is. Do good to those who hate you. Bless those who curse you. Pray for those who abuse you. If anyone strikes you on the cheek, offer the other also. And from anyone who takes away your coat, do not withhold even your shirt. Give to everyone who begs from you. And if anyone takes away your goods, do not ask for them again. Do to others as you would have them do to you. This is Luke's version of the golden rule, right? So I hope you're getting this point. He is saying that we never get to use somebody else's ill behavior as an excuse for us to behave badly, okay? We like to do that. Well, if that's the way it's going to be, then I'm going to do this, you know. Jesus says, no, that's not the way we do this. Verse 32, if you love those who love you, what credit is that to you? For even sinners love those who love them. If you do good to those who do good to you, what credit is that to you? For even sinners do the same. If you lend to those from whom you hope to receive, what credit is that to you? Yeah, I had a friend once say, she was doing me a favor by making some photocopies, a lot of photocopies when I was doing my dissertation. But there was a specific way it had to be done. And I gave her all these instructions, and she was so good about it all. And I said, I feel so badly about about the way it's got to be, and how many. She said, here's what she said. I'm doing you a favor. Now, if I don't do it the way you need it to be done, it's not a favor, is it? There you go. For even sinners, if you lend to those from whom you hope to receive, what credit is that to you? Even sinners lend to sinners to receive as much again. But love your enemies, do good, and lend, expecting nothing in return. Whenever somebody, it doesn't happen very often because I don't carry cash on me and stuff, but if anybody, could I borrow, blah, 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 it's like, you know what? I say, yeah, here, you can have it. And even if they say they're going to pay me back, I accept it. In my head, I'm saying, I'm as far as I'm concerned, it's done. I remember one time somebody asking me, needing $100 from me, or something, $100, $200, I can't remember, something like that. I had it. And I gave it, and this person was promising, oh, you're going to get, oh, and it's going to come back to you fourfold, and, and all kinds of blessings and this and that, and I'll repay you for blah, blah, blah. And I knew all along it wasn't coming back. That's the kind of thing I think we're talking about here. But love your enemies. Do good and lend, expecting nothing in return. Your reward will be great, and you will be children of the Most High. For he is kind to the ungrateful and the wicked. Be merciful, just as your Father is merciful. I think that's the end of it, verse 36 there. Oh, no, it's not. But do we get the point here? As God is with us, this is how we are supposed to be with others. God doesn't use our behavior as an excuse. God's up there, well, they're going to be that way about it, then I'm just not going to. No, God doesn't do that. And if we find ourselves doing it or thinking we have an excuse to do that, we're mistaken. Verse 37 and 38, this is the end. Do not judge, and you will not be judged. Do not condemn, and you will not be condemned. Forgive, and you will be forgiven. Give, and it will be given to you. A good measure, pressed down, shaken together, running over, will be put into your lap, for the measure you give will be the measure you get back. I don't know what else to say about that. If we think about the model of giving that we see by what God did through Jesus and Jesus' death on the cross and his love for us and dying for us and his willingness to put himself out there, it's like he knew what he was doing. He's not appalled at our behavior. Remember what Jesus said about on the cross, forgive them for they know not what they do. This is the way we are supposed to be with others toward us. Yes, it's difficult. Yes, it's totally not easy, but you know what? That's what marks a life of love. That's what marks a life of discipleship. That's what marks a life that is dedicated to a loving God. We behave like the God we think we're serving. Oh, try that one on. We behave like the God we think we're serving. And the Bible is very clear about the God that we're serving. Anything else is just something that we've made up to justify our own ill behavior. Wow. I like that. I hope you did too. That is it for this, the 7th Sunday after the Epiphany on February 20th. I hope to be back with you on the 27th, but I don't want you to miss any of my Bible studies because I want to make sure that this is a part of an option for you in making your worship at Nativity wonderful. Until next time, peace.